Welcome to the Gaudium et Spes podcast, where every other week we bring you Catholic teachings and stories of faith from people throughout the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee. This is the Gaudium et Spes podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Gaudium et Spes podcast. As always, if you haven't already, please check out our last episode where we had Father Pat LaPointe, who is the pastor over at St. Joseph Parish in Pensacola, join us. Ches wasn't with us, but we had the great Kenobia Russell Blackman on air with us, and she did a fantastic job, Ches, although we did miss you, but it's great to have you back here with us today.
Thank you. It was great to kick my feet up and just listen to that one. Like, all right.
Yeah.
Kenobia, awesome job. Great job talking to him, and loved hearing his quite a unique journey to the priesthood.
Definitely.
But y'all, if you have not been to St. Joseph's or seen or met Father Pat LaPointe, his voice, he dropped it for the first time at our Chrism Mass last year as the deacon. It's an incredible baritone or bass, like, wow, just a cut above the rest as far as, anyhow. Not that that's his job as a priest anymore, is to just sing, but it's a cool little thing about him. So, yeah, I enjoyed the episode, but it's good to be back.
Yeah, great. Well, today we have another amazing episode for everyone. We've got Bishop Bill doing his teaching series, and we're actually starting a series on the Corporal Works of Mercy. Yeah. So he introduces what that's all about. Exactly. And then focuses really in on the first two, feeding the hungry and giving drink to the thirsty. So
it's going to be an awesome series. We're going to get to hear from a lot of amazing people actually doing the Corporal Works of Mercy, like yes. Bishop Bill did. You'll hear in this episode. Before that, though, we're going to get to our first line from Gaudium et Spes, which you know well by now, hopefully. The joys and hopes, the griefs and anxieties of the men of this age, especially those who are poor or in any way afflicted. These are the joys, the hopes, griefs, and anxieties of the followers of Christ. It's Easter season. Should be a time of joy. Probably a little bit of anxiety and stress still in our lives. April feels like a stressful month. It just feels like everything is going on all at once. It's tax season. I don't know what's going on.
It is. But, but what do they say? April showers bring May flowers. That's right. So there's always something to look forward to. Now, we're getting into graduation season here. Right, so, whether it's 5th grade, 8th grade, 12th grade, college, whatever, we've got lots of graduates in our midst. And with that brings some anxiety, I'm sure, for some, not knowing what's next. So for all of those who are graduating, pray. You use prayer. Yeah. I mean, seriously. Yeah. I mean, I pray for them, and I think it's a great way to to think about what your next steps are in life. Turn to God for assistance, and have your ears open and listen, because sometimes He's telling you things and you're just not aware of it. But yeah,
it's I do remember. I mean, my last graduation that once I graduated from grad school, it was kind of like your life's. I was already married, had a kid at that point. But 2008, FSU graduation, I was applying to graduate schools, but hadn't gotten in yet. I was thinking about a year of maybe doing some work with the Brotherhood of Hope as an intern. I was thinking about getting engaged. It was just such a, it was the whole, it just felt like the whole foundation of life was a little shaky. People were leaving, people are, this is it. We're not even, there's no, we're going to college together after high school graduate. It's it's over. We're just going to part our ways.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty easy for me because, I went to college on an ROTC scholarship. So I pretty much, the day I graduated from college was the same day I received my commission, and I was headed off to my first assignment. So for me, the anxiety of finding a job wasn't necessarily there. There was more the anxiety of, where am I going and what am I going to get into, and all the newness that comes with all of that. But I know there's a lot more people that were in more of your situation, not really grad school, job, you kind of know what you'd like to do, but what opportunities are out there, and it's just really tough. So
prayer indeed.
Yes. So what's going on with you, Ches?
I'm still, honestly, the vacation over to New Orleans, it was 2 days, but it was so fun. It's just funny. You stick kids in a hotel room, and you could stick them in a hotel room on the moon. Well, obviously on the moon would be pretty exciting, but it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just hotel room equals life is awesome. So it's fun putting them in there. But we had a great time over in New Orleans. City Park over there is just such a beautiful place in the springtime. This huge field of wildflowers, wild yellow flowers, beautiful, frolicking around out there. We went to the National World War II Museum.
Oh, yes.
And that was excellent. I'm sure a lot of you have already been there, but just some really, really, really touching personal artifacts that make up the museum that tell the story of the greatest generation and all the sacrifices they made and the harrowing stuff they went through and a lot of time the life they built afterwards. So just a really special time over there.
Yeah. How about the food?
We did Herd Dat Kitchen next to the Superdome, which is kind of a little hole in the wall and amazing gumbo.
Okay.
Amazing gumbo. Did the beignets at Cafe Du Monde.
Yes.
And then what did we do the next day? I cannot remember. But definitely Herd Dat Kitchen was outstanding.
Good deal.
Really good stuff. Love Southern Louisiana food. Unbelievable stuff. Okay. Enough of the pleasantries. As Suzanne said, it is time to kick off our series on the Corporal Works of Mercy. Bishop's going to teach about the first two, which is feeding the hungry and giving drink to the thirsty, and his personal experiences at Andre House out in Arizona. So we'll see you on the other side.
In this episode, I'm going to talk about the Corporal Works of Mercy, real acts, tangible acts done for our neighbor. It comes right out of Matthew 25. In there, Jesus tells us how we will be judged, how all this ends. The Son of Man will come in his glory, and he will be seated on his throne, and all the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And to those on his right he will say, "Welcome to my Father's glory, for I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. In prison, and you visited me," etc. And to those on the left, you are not welcome to come into our Father's house because I was hungry and you neglected to feed me, etc., etc. I think the amazing thing about that is both sides, if you will, are shocked. But when did we do this to you, or when did we neglect you when you were in need like this? And then Jesus gives us really the zinger, the teaching of that part of the gospel, and he says, "As often as you did it to one of the least of my brothers or sisters, you did it for me. As often as you neglected to do it to them, you neglected to do it to me." So what Jesus is teaching us, of course, is the gospel truth that salvation is knowing, loving, and serving the Lord. And how do we do that as mere mortals? How can we serve the Lord? Well, we do that through worship, but we do that also especially by serving our brothers and sisters in very real and tangible ways. Frankly, in the ways that he set out in Matthew 25, in the 25th chapter of Matthew's Gospel. And so we call these the corporal works of mercy because they have to do with the body, serving the body in very tangible ways. So we have the 6 of them from Matthew 25, and then there's one more, and that is burying the dead. That's not in Matthew 25, but clearly that is a value for us, and it is one of the corporal works of mercy, in addition to the ones Jesus laid out. There are also spiritual works of mercy, and that's found throughout the Gospels, of course. And as soon as I say them, you'll understand what they are, and they make sense. It is counseling the doubtful, instructing the ignorant, admonishing the sinner, comforting the sorrowful, forgiving injuries, bearing wrongs patiently, and praying for the living and the dead. These are not all found like the others in one chapter of the gospel, but of course are found throughout the gospels, because Jesus did all of these again and again in his daily life, in his teaching, his preaching, in his parables. He showed us how to do that we must care for one another, pray for one another, teach one another, instruct one another, etc. But today we're talking about the corporal works of mercy, that is, those oriented to the body. So Jesus clearly came in the flesh. He wasn't a ghost or a figment of our imagination or a spirit or a voice from heaven. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. As such, he touched people and healed people and tended to the sick and the suffering and the hungry. In the first letter of John, the first chapter, he says, the sacred author says, "We proclaim to you what we have seen and heard with our eyes and ears, what we have touched with our hands. The Word was made flesh, and this we hand on to you." And after washing the feet of his disciples, Jesus said, "Go and do likewise." It is clear that he wants us to do more than simply wish others well or pray for them. Now, we should do that, but we need to do more. He calls us to serve him in serving our brothers and sisters. Staying with that theme of the body, we are more than spirit. We are not just a soul occupying a body for a limited time. No, we are created in the image and likeness of God. Our body is good and holy. We cannot inflict harm on our own body or those of others. Our identity and our sexuality are written into our bodies, as Pope St. John Paul II taught. By healing some who were sick and blind or suffering, Jesus showed that our body and the health of our body is good. And we profess that we believe in the resurrection of the body on the last day. In the resurrection and ascension, Jesus rose to heaven with, or rather in, his human body. It's really amazing to think about that before the ascension, our flesh was not in heaven in a sense. Now, what Jesus took our flesh into heaven, which is why St. Paul could say, we are already citizens of heaven. And we pray with the Church on the solemnity of the ascension that says, where the head has gone in glory, the body hopes to follow in mercy and hope. Back to Matthew 25. Jesus is giving us the answer key to how this will all end, to what will be on the final exam, if you will. In very real and down-to-earth ways, we must imitate the Lord. Jesus says, "Whoever loves me will do what I do, and the Father will love him." Okay, I think you get it. I really wanted to talk about the body and why that's important and why it's important for us to serve each other in very real and tangible ways. Why mercy? We call them the Corporal Works of Mercy. Mercy is something that is given to another when it is not warranted or justified. Mercy is a pure gift. And this is how we are to serve one another, not out of any selfish motive, not out of a desire to be paid back or served back, but as a pure gift. Jesus, of course, embodied this perfectly. He said even, the Son of Man has come not to be served, but to serve, indeed to lay down his life for the many, for everyone, for sinners, for the world, for all of creation. And Jesus gives us a wonderful example that challenges us, maybe every time we hear it, but also teaches us what mercy looks like. And that is the parable of the workers in the vineyard, when the landowner hires workers at dawn, at 9 o'clock in the morning, at noon, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and at 5. And at 6 o'clock gathers them all together and starts to pay them. And they're all paid the same. Even those who worked only an hour are given a full day's wage. The people who worked all day are understandably outraged, curious as to why this is happening. They said, you're paying them, you're treating us equally. And they only worked an hour, and we've been working all day in the sun. And Jesus' response is very, very good, very, very important for us. He teaches us what mercy looks like when he says, I intend to give these last ones the same agreed upon rate that I gave you, that I said I would give to you. And he said, are you angry or jealous because I am so generous? I love that. In other words, what's that to you? What if I intend to give the last one the same as I gave you? It doesn't matter to you. You're getting the full amount. So is this last person. That's what mercy looks like. It is a pure gift, even if it is not warranted or justified. Jesus showed perfect mercy when he died for our sins, the innocent for the guilty, even though he himself was without sin. Talk about an unwarranted gift. And then Jesus said to us, to his disciples, and to all of us, go and do likewise. Okay, I listed the spiritual works of mercy. I'll list the corporal works of mercy as well. like I said, found in Matthew 25. Feeding the hungry, giving drink to the thirsty, visiting the sick, visiting the imprisoned, clothing the naked, sheltering the homeless, burying the dead. Let's look at two of them in depth, what we traditionally number as the first two. I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink, said the Lord. I was hungry. We all have to eat. Without food, we die. It's pretty simple. Most of us listening today are blessed to be able to eat whatever we want, whenever we want to. Perhaps if we haven't eaten in several hours, we may even say, I'm starving. But we're not at that point by a long shot. However, there are people in our own communities and certainly around the world who are not only hungry, but who are starving. Many go to bed hungry and wake up hungry. Because of many factors, they need help getting food. They need our help. Here's a simple and yet miraculous example in the Gospels where Jesus did this. He fed people. You know what I'm going to say. It's the feeding of the multitude. A multitude of people, thousands we find out, followed Jesus to a remote place and hung on every word that came from his mouth. He was feeding them the bread of life, of course, the word of God. And they were so caught up in that they didn't even think about leaving or going to get food and bringing it back or anything like that. And it was, we're told, a remote place, so that probably wasn't even possible. They were so caught up in what was going on that they just stayed and stayed. Jesus was feeding their souls, yet their bodies also needed nourishment. And Jesus shows that he understands the human condition when he brought it up, actually, to Philip and some of the other disciples. And he said, this is a remote place. Where are we going to find something for them to eat? He was testing them to see if they knew the answer, if they were going to come up with some answer. And when they said, all we have are 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, there's nothing we can do, that's when Jesus had them all sit down. He took the bread and the fish. He thanked God for the gift of food. And then all of a sudden, miraculously, everyone there had enough to eat. And there was a lot left over as well. Jesus not only multiplied just a few, one for everyone or something like that, but as with everything that he does, he went overboard. There was a superabundance of food. And so Jesus didn't just talk about this. He was actually showing us what to do. Feed one another, not just with the word of God, though we need to do that, but feed them, help them, especially those who are in great need. So how can we do the same today? Well, we can't really multiply food miraculously. I've tried, and just hasn't happened or whatever. But we're not God, so we know our limitations. But we can and we must feed others. There is plenty around us. It is well known that there is enough food on earth. We grow enough food. We process and make enough food every day to feed the world. It's not a matter of supply. It's a matter of getting this to people. Right away, we no doubt think of soup kitchens or food pantries, and this is good as these provide food to people in desperate situations. I was pleased and privileged to be able to work in a soup kitchen. We didn't call it a soup kitchen, but that's really what it was. It was a house of hospitality for hundreds of people every day who were in great need. Not only would we offer them a lot of the Corporal Works of Mercy, literally feeding them, those who had no clothes, or providing a place for them to have ice or water in the desert there in Phoenix, to wash, to be able just to recover when they're sick, etc. But probably the biggest ministry there was to serve them an evening meal for about 500 or 600 people every night. And it was amazing and rewarding and challenging and very informative for me and my faith. And what was really neat is that there we ate the same food. We ate with our guests every night. The staff and the volunteers would sit down with our guests, or if some of us were cleaning up afterwards, and we would eat the same food. And that taught me that it's not me leaning down to give these poor people food. We're all in this together. And this, the food was a pure gift to the house of hospitality, or we bought it with the money that people would give to us. And then we prepared it for ourselves and for others. And I think that was, for me, a great sign of the kingdom of God, that we all come together to assist one another and to share in the blessings that God has given to us. Another great lesson, I know I've said this before, is that we would have groups come to volunteer with us every night. And maybe 10, 20 people from youth groups or parishes or corporations around Phoenix or outside in Scottsdale, they would come and volunteer. We needed about 20 or 30 people every night to chop and slice and dice and mix and spoon and, spoon all the food out and clean up and everything. And invariably, almost every day, groups would come, especially if it was their first time, and they would say, how can just the few of us, how is this going to make a difference? How are we going to be able to provide food? I can barely cook for myself at home. And I would say, don't worry about it. Just take this big tub of tomatoes or potatoes or onions or whatever and just start chopping. It's going to take you hours. And then we would do that, and all of us would do that, and through conversation and sometimes through prayer while we're doing that, we would be amazed. A whole meal for 500 or 600 people would just not appear, but it would be prepared, and then we would serve it to people. Perhaps you can assist in a local soup kitchen or place where they provide food for other people. I know it sometimes can seem daunting or a little intimidating. No one is going to ask you to do something you're not comfortable with. Perhaps you could just go and maybe even just start by helping out in the kitchen and cleaning up pots and pans or doing dishes after or during dinner or something like that. Or, there's another for some people who were a little hesitant to be out there, with the guests. There was a table for water and drinks, and you can just stand behind that. That's a beautiful thing, to just give out water, give drinks to people who are in need. And then we see a progression of people who want to do more and more. And then pretty soon they say, well, I want to go and talk to folks if they're willing, while they eat. So anyway, there's just, it may seem intimidating, but there's so much need that if you go to a place, I think they would surely be glad to have you, and they would put you to work so that you could live your faith in this way. Perhaps you could assist also in a food pantry. Many churches, almost all of our churches, either have or are connected with a food pantry in the community. That's a place where we can collect food, and people who are in need can come, say, every other week or once a month, whatever it is, whatever system they've worked out, to get simple groceries for themselves and their families. I don't know, a lot of people think that, it must be just people who are homeless who do that, but the reality is it's our neighbors. It's people who are working 1 or 2 jobs, people who are working, living paycheck to paycheck, who can really benefit and keep going from a bag full of groceries every week or something like that. So I know parishes can always use help sorting the food, keeping track of it, giving it out perhaps, and then through St. Vincent de Paul or Catholic Charities or the parish itself by actually taking these to people's homes, or just receiving them when they come to the parish or the food pantry. But what a neat place, what a neat thing to do as well. Quite often, I must say, at least it's been my experience, the shelves are fairly empty, especially, around peak times, maybe the holidays or for some reason, summer months. I don't know, I guess, because there are probably a lot of drives during the school year or other times. And so people, and then other holidays, people bring in food because they think about that around Thanksgiving and Christmas. But for the rest of the year, they really need food. So one thing might be just to contact your parish and see, A, do they have a food pantry? And B, if they don't, where is the closest one? And what do they need? A lot of times they're overwhelmed with certain food, maybe canned goods or something, and they say, we could really use pasta right now, spaghetti noodles or something, or, pasta sauce, or vegetables, or meat, or eggs, or bread, something like that. And that's something that's so easy when you go shopping, just get some more groceries and bring it over. It means the world to people who are in need. And it's a great way for us to live out our faith. Literally, to answer that call when Jesus said, I was hungry and you gave me food. This is the way we can serve the Lord, by serving our brothers and sisters. There are various organizations and ministries locally and around the world that specialize in feeding others. I'm thinking of places or organizations like Food for the Poor, or Feed My Starving Children, or UNICEF, Catholic Relief Services, Red Cross, etc. I would also say, in addition to maybe donating to those organizations or some like that, teach your children to volunteer, to donate food, or to contribute money to those places that do help others. Another way to do this is by being aware of what you consume and how much you and I waste or throw away. It's embarrassing. It's kind of shameful how much food gets thrown away in restaurants and in private homes every single day. They say that what we throw away every day could feed the world, So it's not, I say this not to make us feel guilty. Well, in a sense, maybe, yes, but just to make us aware a little bit more of how we can be, conserve food, or make sure we don't waste food, so that, first of all, we're not consuming more than we need to, so that more food is available for our brothers and sisters. And besides, fasting from food occasionally can help us to identify with those who are hungry, and it can move us to serve God and serve our neighbor. Lastly, advocate and learn about hunger in our community and around the world. Already there are many things that are being done. People are so generous, but the need is great. How is God calling you to feed him in our brothers and sisters who are literally hungry? Okay, the second one. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. And a lot of what I said for feeding the hungry is applicable here, of course. But there are specific things that we can do to literally feed or bring water, bring drink to those who are thirsty. I look always to the scriptures for examples, and we have another perfect example in the same gospel that I keep quoting, the Gospel of John. That one is very earthy, very tangible, very corporal. That's the one that really talks about Jesus. The Word was made flesh. And in there, Jesus doesn't just heal someone with the word, but he makes mud with his saliva and smears it on the person's ear. Or for the one who is deaf, he puts his fingers in their ears and groans to God. So he's very tangible and very corporal. But in that gospel, chapter 4, Jesus gives us the example of, he shows us, he is the example of him with the Samaritan woman at the well. Jesus, tired from his journey, about midday in the desert there, in a very arid climate, sits down near the well. He sees a woman there, a Samaritan woman, and he says, "Woman, give me something to drink." And you probably know this. If you don't, please go read that from the entire chapter 4 of John's Gospel. It's beautiful. But you see a progression. First, she's outraged. How can you, a Jewish man, speak to me, a Samaritan woman, and ask me for a drink? On the surface, Jesus was literally thirsty, no doubt. But, as we see, he's thirsting for something more. So after she expresses outrage that he's even talking to her, Jesus said, "If only you knew who it is who is before you who is asking for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you life-giving water, so that you will never be thirsty again." And even though she didn't yet know what she was saying, she said, "Sir, give me that water, so that I may not have to keep coming back here to the well again." And we go on. And what we find out again, as I said, is that Jesus is thirsting. As Mother Teresa said, Jesus thirsts for our love. He thirsts for our response. He thirsts for us. And he got that response from the woman. He awakened in her this great faith, enough that she ran into town and started to evangelize. And we find out that soon almost the whole town came to believe in Jesus or follow him, first because of her word, and then because they saw him for themselves. To satisfy Jesus' thirst for us, we must go to him and bring others to him as well. Okay, how can we help those who are literally thirsty? Well, literally by handing out water. One thing that I know that a lot of people do is they carry little water bottles around or in their car, so that when they see someone, especially in the warmer months, hotter months, and they see someone maybe trying with a sign at a corner or something like that, or just standing looking for something, that's something you can do. If it's safe for you, then you can certainly say hi, greet them, ask God's blessing over them. But if you want, it's good. It's easy just to hand maybe, a bottle of water or something like that. Again, if it's safe for you to do that, I think it's always good. Or you can wave. I've talked to many people who were in that situation, and they say, I think the hardest thing is so many people just don't even look at them, or they're afraid to look at them, or roll up their window, or pretend that, and I admit I've done this before. You pretend there's something else really interesting over here, and you don't have to make eye contact with them. But I'm trying to remember what they said, just even a smile or just a wave. If my window's open, I'll just say, sorry, I don't have anything for you, but God bless you. And they seem to appreciate that. But if you do have water, that's one thing you can do. I think we can also learn about the scarcity of water in various parts of the world. As with food, there's so much need in the world for even just basic drinkable water. Join with others who are building wells or filtration systems in other poorer parts of the world, in those places that are most in need. And again, we should all be careful not to waste the water that we have or exploit it while so many people thirst desperately for it. These are just a few examples. I'm sure you can think of many more ways in which we can literally, really, truly, tangibly bring food and drink to those who are in need. Overall, more than anything, Jesus is calling us to serve him in serving our brothers and sisters. Not just to say, keep warm and well fed. I hope it all turns out well for you. I'll pray for you. Even though that's important to do, to really, literally help them. These have been just a few examples of how we can help others. As we profess belief in Jesus Christ, incarnate, made flesh for us, may we incarnate, or rather embody, God's love and mercy for all people in the way we live and love and act with those around us.
Hello and welcome back. Wow, another incredible teaching episode by Bishop Wack. Ches, it's so interesting how, when I do my morning prayer and, there's a quote by someone that is somewhat related to what we do here on the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
So this morning it was from St. Basil the Great.
Nice.
And it said, "The bread you store up belongs to the hungry. The cloak that lies in your closet belongs to the naked. And the gold you have hidden in the ground belongs to the poor." I mean, just, how appropriate is that as we talk about these corporal works of mercy? So
those church fathers, they have a way of just kind of...
I know.
That's awesome.
Just bringing it home, for the most part. So, what did you take away from this episode?
All of his, if you're in the diocese, spend time around Bishop, the Andre House stories are they're always great. I know he thinks he tells them too often.
Yeah.
They're always awesome. To have a bishop who was in the trenches in that visceral of a way for that long of a time, it just gives him a pastoral authority. And he's just been there and done that. You never feel like if he's exhorting you, like, come and feed the hungry. It's like, he already did it. And so, I just love that a bit. But, the thing that honestly I was struck by as we sat here listening to him recording it, he connected so well that classic Baltimore Catechism line. So the first question of the Baltimore Catechism, what is our purpose in this life? Answer, it is to know, love and serve the Lord. So, those first two come pretty naturally. You develop a knowledge through learning about the faith and
Right.
catechesis and all these kind of things. The loving aspect, clearly, in developing that in prayer in your spiritual life, an affection for the Lord. The serve one is interesting. How do you serve? Well, a lot of time, like what are our responsibilities in life? Absolutely. Bishop did such a great job, though, connecting is like the most. It is directly related to Matthew 25. Jesus tells you, this is how you serve me.
Right.
You do these things to the least of my brothers. And that's the most that's your super highway to complete that third objective as your purpose in life. Know, love, and serve the Lord. And honestly, I don't think I've ever heard it put as succinctly as that before, where it's like, I can't fulfill my obligation to serve the Lord if I don't do the corporal works of mercy. There it is. So, love that. What'd you take away from it?
For me, I think, the Corporal Works of Mercy, and I didn't connect the dots until this episode too, but for me, it started at home with the examples of my parents. Yeah. I can remember my dad around Christmas, Thanksgiving time frame, he would go to the ATM or the bank and get some crisp, started out as $20 bills, then it went up to 50 and then finally 100. But he would walk into, Save-A-Lot grocery store and just stand there. And as people were, kind of walking by with their carts, he would hand them a crisp $20, $50, $100 bills so that they could help, pay for their groceries that particular season. And, it's just like, geez, there he is, he's feeding the people, he's helping them out in that respect. And then my mom, taught me how to, get good sales at stores. But, it wasn't just finding sale items to bring home. It was finding sale items to then donate.
Oh, wow.
So, the after whatever Christmas or some other kind of sales when they had blankets or winter coats or whatever, she'd always go in and buy up whatever they had and, all different sizes and then take them down to the local, charity and donate them. So for me, it really started at home. And, that was really a powerful message when Bishop was talking about it. I was just remembering the good that they've done. And, it really is amazing.
It is something as a parent I feel responsible in those moments. Especially one of the things about living in Pensacola is there's a transient population that's pretty present, and honestly, it's where the faith in those moments that Bishop talked about, like making eye contact, greeting people. That's where you separate your identity as a family. Because